Well, it comes just hours after the president gave two cameras unprecedented access to negotiations on immigration.
Truly, it should be a bill of love, and we can do that.
Is there any agreement without the wall?
No, it wouldn't be.
So where do we go from here? What is possibly going to happen today, Griff? That really was amazing and unprecedented to watch yesterday.
Unbelievable and nearly hour-long pool spray. But first, that breaking news, Heather. Last night, that federal judge in San Francisco temporarily blocking the administration's decision to end the DACA program in March. That's what they were meeting about in the first place. This ruling allows DACA to remain in place while legal challenges to it can play out. And, of course, President Trump leading that extraordinary bipartisan meeting of lawmakers at the White House negotiating over DACA ahead of next week's January 19th spending bill deadline. We got that rare glimpse of the president working and really working for compromise.
I think there needs to be a willingness on both sides. What about a clean DACA bill now, with a commitment that we go into a comprehensive immigration reform procedure?
We're going to come up with DACA. We're going to do DACA, and then we can start immediately on the phase 2, which would be comprehensive.
Now, Republicans in the room dialed the president back a bit and pressed harder for border security and the wall as any part of an initial deal. What emerged were four key issues in what will likely be phase 1 of the immigration deal: DACA, border security, changes to change migration, and ending the visa lottery system. The president expressing confidence in the lawmakers that they are going to get it done.
There should be no reason for us not to get this done. I will be signing it. I'm not going to say, oh, gee, I want this or I want that. I'll be signing it because I have a lot of confidence in the people in this room that you're going to come out with something really good.
After the meeting, Heather, the president tweeting a reminder that any part of a DACA deal must include the wall, lest anyone wasn't fully comprehending that when that extraordinary meeting took place. But it was rare that we got to see things really be negotiated, and lawmakers who both sides appeared to be committed to trying to find a way to make it happen. As it relates to that ruling, just a final note, the Department of Justice spokesman actually telling the Associated Press that they're going to continue to fight it. We're reaching out to get more on it for you later this morning.
I mean, you know, while they're negotiating it, you do that. It just doesn't make any sense. And a lot of questions as to what's going to happen moving forward. But negotiations have just begun, right? Thank you so much, Griff.
Judge rules against Trump administration on rescinding DACA. A federal judge in San Francisco on Tuesday barred the Trump administration from turning back the Obama-era DACA program, which shielded more than 700,000 people from deportation, Reuters reported. U.S. District Judge William Alsup, an appointee of President Bill Clinton, ruled that the program must stay intact while litigation is played out. Alsup ordered that until a final judgment is reached, the program must continue and those already approved for DACA protections and work permits must be allowed to renew them before they expire. Dreamers who have never received DACA protections, however, will not be allowed to apply, Alsup ordered. Trump last year ended the Obama-era Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program. He gave Congress until March to find a fix. The Department of Justice said in a statement that the ruling does not change the department's position on the facts.
President Trump's attorney Michael Cohen told CNN's Brian Stelter that he filed a defamation lawsuit against BuzzFeed because BuzzFeed published that dossier. Brian got a statement from BuzzFeed and it says the dossier continues to be the subject of active investigations by Congress and intelligence agencies. It was presented to 2 successive presidents and it has been described in detail by news outlets around the world. Its interest to public is obvious. This is not the first time Trump's personal attorney has attacked the free press, and we look forward to defending our First Amendment rights in court.
Right.
What does Michael Cohen, does he have a case?
No, I don't think so. I mean, the BuzzFeed has a First Amendment right to publish this. It's not a classified document. It has no, sort of protections in that respect. If the contents of the document are libelous, if that's what he thinks, then he can sue the authors of the report. But I think BuzzFeed as a news organization is pretty well insulated from that sort of lawsuit. But it is the type of bluster that we have seen in the administration with the threatened lawsuits or the actual lawsuits that don't go anywhere as a means of suppressing conversation, which is obviously.
CNN nearly 1 year to the day after the Russia dossier's publication, President Donald Trump's personal lawyer hit both the research firm that produced it and the news organization that released it with lawsuits, saying its allegations about him are wrong. Michael Cohen, a personal lawyer for Trump who was named in the dossier, says BuzzFeed and several of its staffers defamed him when it published the 35-page document and an accompanying article last January. He also says that Fusion GPS and Glenn Simpson, its founder, similarly defamed him after it hired an ex-British spy to compile the document as part of its opposition research against the Trump campaign. BuzzFeed, as well as its editor-in-chief, Ben Smith, reporter Ken Bensinger and editors Miriam Elder and Mark Scoofs are named as the defendants in the state-level suit. Even though defendant BuzzFeed expressly acknowledged the unverified, and potentially unverifiable, nature of the dossier's allegations, defendant BuzzFeed published the UN-redacted dossier and the article anyway, without attempting to determine the veracity of these reports with plaintiff himself, Cohen wrote in the lawsuit filed Tuesday night in New York State Court. Fusion GPS recklessly placed it beyond their control and allowed it to fall into the hands of media devoted to breaking news on the hottest subject of the day, the Trump candidacy, the federal lawsuit against the firm said. With the filings, Cohen becomes the closest person to the president to take on the dossier's explosive claims in court. Plus, the suits could put Cohen, who worked for the Trump Organization and now is a personal lawyer to Trump himself, in the position of proving that the dossier's allegations are false. Cohen makes several assertions in his lawsuits, saying that the dossier's claims about family ties to Russia and a trip he took overseas to meet with Russian officials are wrong. He then says that the allegations in the dossier and article have hurt him professionally. Although no amount of money can ever remedy the damage that has been sustained by Mr. Cohen, we will be seeking maximum damages for the lies contained in the so-called dossier, Cohen's attorney, David Schwartz, said in a statement. We believe in our courts and our system of justice and that when all the facts are in, justice will prevail and Mr. Cohen will be awarded damages against the defendants. When reached by phone on Tuesday night, Cohen further criticized the lie-filled dossier. Let me be totally clear that the allegations raised against me in the public square and raised largely by BuzzFeed, Fusion GPS and others in the press are based upon misinformation, unnamed or unverifiable sources, Cohen told CNN. Their actions are so malicious, despicable and reckless, one can only presume that their motives were intentional. Matt Mittenthal, a spokesman for BuzzFeed News, responded to the suit in a statement. The dossier is, and continues to be, the subject of active investigations by Congress and intelligence agencies. It was presented to 2 successive presidents, and has been described in detail by news outlets around the world. Its interest to the public is obvious. Mittenthal added, this is not the first time Trump's personal lawyer has attacked the free press, and we look forward to defending our First Amendment rights in court. Cohen, like many of Trump's aides and allies, has been harshly critical of some national news outlets. Last week another attorney working for Trump personally, Charles Harder, sent a cease and desist letter to the publisher and author of the new book Fire and Fury, Inside the Trump White House, seeking to stop further distribution. The publisher went ahead and released it 4 days early. Cohen's action on Tuesday came on the same day that Smith wrote an op-ed for the New York Times, titled, I'm proud we published the Trump-Russia dossier. Without the dossier, Americans would have found it difficult to understand the actions of their elected representatives and government officials, Smith wrote. Their posture toward Mr. Trump was, we now know, even more comprehensively than we did in January 2017, shaped by ex-British intelligence agent Christopher Steele's report. The Russia investigation, meanwhile, didn't turn out to be some minor side story but instead the central challenge to Mr. Trump's presidency. Smith made this argument in the op-ed, I haven't had a single person approach me to say, I wish I hadn't read the dossier, and wish I had less insight into the forces at play in America. Do you feel that way? Does anyone? Cohen's lawsuit isn't the only defamation case BuzzFeed faces. The company and Smith are defendants in another high-stakes lawsuit in Florida, where Russian tech company leader says the news organization defamed him and his companies by linking them to the hack of the Democratic National Committee. BuzzFeed later redacted its online version of the dossier to exclude those named and issued an apology shortly after the lawsuit was filed. Fusion GPS similarly faces several lawsuits related to its work on the dossier. Thank you for your support. Please subscribe, like, share and comment. Washington, President Donald Trump lashed out on Wednesday, Jan 10, at the U.S. judicial system is broken and unfair after a judge blocked his decision to end a program that protects so-called dreamers from deportation. The White House earlier had called the ruling Tuesday by U.S. District Judge William Alsup in San Francisco outrageous, coming the same day Trump met lawmakers from both camps on the so-called Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, or DACA, program. It just shows everyone how broken and unfair our court system is when the opposing side in a case, such as DACA, always runs to the Ninth Circuit and almost always wins before being reversed by higher courts, Trump said in a tweet. The DACA program, instituted by Trump's predecessor Barack Obama in 2012, protects from deportation hundreds of thousands of immigrants who arrived in the country illegally as children. In a high-profile, on-camera meeting at the White House, Trump had urged leaders from both parties to compromise on the fate of the Dreamers while at the same time insisting on the need for his controversial wall along the Mexican border. But the unusual public display of presidential deal-making was jarred soon after by Alsup's ruling ordering the administration to maintain the program nationally pending the resolution of a court challenge. Alsup questioned the validity of the Justice Department's argument that DACA had been illegally implemented, saying it was based on a flawed legal premise. Unless Alsup's order is overturned by a higher court, former DACA recipients will now be eligible to submit renewal applications and the government will be required to post reasonable public notice that the program is once again active. Trump said in September he was scrapping the DACA program but delayed enforcement to give Congress 6 months, until March, to craft a lasting solution. An issue of this magnitude must go through the normal legislative process, White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders said in a statement Wednesday. President Trump is committed to the rule of law, and will work with members of both parties to reach a permanent solution that corrects the unconstitutional actions taken by the last administration, she said. The development is the latest in a series of battles in which Trump actions aimed at curbing immigration have run into trouble in the courts. The U.S. Supreme Court last month allowed the implementation of Trump's ban on travel from 8 countries, 6 of them predominantly Muslim, but only after 2 previous versions were blocked by the courts. Bill of Love. In his White House meeting with lawmakers, Trump signaled that he was open to more comprehensive immigration reform to address millions of other undocumented people living in the shadows, as long as Democrats are willing to countenance greater border security, including through a wall with Mexico. It should be a bill of love, Trump said of a measure under negotiation that would protect hundreds of thousands of dreamers from deportation. But it also has to be a bill where we're able to secure our border. Drugs are pouring into our country at a record pace. A lot of people are coming in that we can't have, Trump added, urging lawmakers to put country before party and strike a quick solution. Take the heat. Trump, seated at a long table with some 24 lawmakers from the House and Senate, presided over the bipartisan talks, allowing journalists rare access to nearly an hour of the meeting. The president said he would take the heat politically if lawmakers were to move toward broader action that would provide a pathway to citizenship for about 11 million undocumented immigrants living in the United States. You are not that far away from comprehensive immigration reform, he told Senator Lindsey Graham, after the Republican lawmaker floated the idea of more sweeping legislation. You created an opportunity here, Mr. President, and you need to close the deal, Graham told him as TV cameras rolled. Trump's position appeared at odds with his 2016 campaign, when his platform focused largely on border security and immigration curtailment, and many of his core supporters raged at the prospect of legalizing millions of undocumented immigrants.